to talk it all through is Rory Barlow. He's the editor of Football España. Great to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us. So Galtier confirming Messi's departure, but I wonder, what did you make of today's developments as a whole and those words that Galtier used when he said that he hopes Messi will receive the warmest of welcomes this weekend?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Patrick. I think it speaks to the slightly up and down relationship that he's had with Paris Saint-Germain fans. I think people perhaps remember that just after PSG were eliminated from the Champions League, Messi was one of the ones that was booed and whistled the most by fans, and I think that was overplayed a little bit. But certainly Messi represents a culture and a sort of, a feeling in PSG that it's built around superstars and not a football team. And I think Messi's spell in Paris has not been optimal. It was not an optimal arrival. Nothing about it was planned, so to speak. And that ended up kind of playing out with what we saw with Messi on the pitch at PSG. And ultimately, it's partly why I think he's departing now.
Yeah, you make valid points. Just how would you sort of grade his time there in the French capital? How would you sort of sum it up? Because you assume he was signed in the first place, right, to help them win the Holy Grail that is the Champions League. And where do you feel he's most likely to head next?
Yeah, it's a difficult one to grade because if you look at his statistics by any other player's standard, then Lionel Messi is right up there. He's up there with the best in the world, and he's probably going to be a contender for the Ballon d'Or again this season. But looking at PSG and their goals and where they base their success off, then it has to be a bit of a failure, to be honest. Like on the outside, on the commercial side of things, and definitely this is a deal that's worked out for them. But on the pitch, it's not gone too well. I mean, Kylian Mbappe is not happy. They want to move on Neymar Jr. And then that comes around to Leo Messi, who is the easiest to get rid of, so to speak, or to move on because his contract is up. And as you're saying, that next destination is the point of big speculation here, because in Barcelona, there's certainly a desire. They've voiced it. They've made it clear. Xavi, the manager, has even put pressure on Leo Messi, saying it's 99% up to him where he goes next. And to a certain extent, that is true, but his entourage are very careful. Jorge Messi is his father and agent, who felt very much betrayed, very much burnt by the last time that Leo Messi had to leave Barcelona when they had to pull out their offer from 2 years ago. So there's certainly an attitude within the Messi camp. I think that they want to see hard facts, they want to see offers in writing, and they want everything to be done above board early on. And that opens the door for other destinations like Saudi Arabia, who we know are putting on a massive offer in for Messi. And I think that would be very tempting. And then there's Inter Miami, which of course is the option which provides him with perhaps the nicest lifestyle. He has property in Miami already. I think his kids would be appreciative of that option as well. So yeah, it is very much open. Where does he go next? It kind of depends on what Barcelona can do and what Saudi Arabia can offer, I think.
Yeah, we are watching it very closely indeed. It is fascinating to see where he will head next. We're also watching the situation at PSG, of course, right? Because there could well be more changes afoot there, as you've referenced in the off-season. I do want to ask you, though, about Jose Mourinho, the very high-profile manager that he is, because he'll be hurting, right? We know he's likely hurting after Roma's Europa League final defeat to Sevilla. Roma missing out on the Champions League as well. How do you see Mourinho's future panning out at the moment?
Yeah, look, I mean, Jose Mourinho, anyone who's familiar with him, anyone who's been keeping a track of his career so far knows that he doesn't mind playing the pantomime villain, and he was certainly in that role against Sevilla on Wednesday night. And after the game, he waited for the referees afterwards. In the car park, he was abusing them. That was caught on camera. After the game in the press conference, he said, "I'm tired. I want to go on holiday. I need time to think and to rest." And certainly he's been non-committal on his future. I mean, the Roma players asked him before the game, are you going to stay? Are you going to stick around after this? And he said that he gave them an objective answer, that he wouldn't tell the press exactly what he'd said. But they're not the sounds of somebody who sounds as if they want to stay. Or certainly I think a move is in the offing. If a better option comes up, then Mourinho seems more likely to take it than not. But these are human beings, and we know that they can change their mind in an instant. Perhaps a talk or conversation could switch things around for him.
Yeah, most definitely. Certainly those altercations with the officials after the match, not a good look in any way, shape or form for him. Another high-profile name around whom there is much speculation right now is the Real Madrid goal machine Karim Benzema, who addressed just that actually on Thursday in Madrid. Let's listen in to what he had to say.
If I am to remain at Real Madrid, Yes, for the time being, I'm here. I enjoy it every day, I train well, and we have an upcoming match on Saturday. Why should I speak about my future if I am at Madrid? What people say is on the internet, and reality is not on the internet.
Interesting words. Rory, Karim turns 36 later on this year. He's a Los Blancos legend. He's a Ballon d'Or winner last year. Look, you're right there in the heart of Spain's capital city. What's the word on the street, and how do you interpret those words that he said on Thursday?
Yeah, listen, it's an interesting case because just to give you a very brief timeline of how this has kind of come about, sometime towards the end of last week, we started to get rumours that Real Madrid were interested in Harry Kane, and Harry Kane is not a backup for Karim Benzema. The two probably couldn't coexist in the same team. And then towards the end of last week, the very end and the start of this week, we get noises that Karim Benzema is maybe considering bringing his Real Madrid career to an end. And that noise has really kind of ramped up into a full-scale kind of media storm on this afternoon, and it was all very much set for Karim Benzema to leave. The French sources nearby to him, which is something that I place a lot of stock in, were saying that he's made the decision to leave. And then he comes out, he's at an award ceremony in Madrid with the biggest Madrid paper. Now, this is important because he said internet's not reality, as you heard. He said that I'm here in Madrid, we've got a game on Sunday. Do I necessarily think that it's 100% done that he's going to stay in Real Madrid? I don't necessarily think so, and I think we'll have to wait and see. This is a player that is not only dealing with, am I going to leave Real Madrid, but am I going to call to an end my career at the elite level? And that's a hard decision to take, so I wouldn't be surprised to hear and see that maybe he has been considering it, maybe he's come very close to it, and if he does stay, that it was a toss-up decision. But certainly nobody will know apart from Karim Benzema right now, but I wouldn't kind of call time on this case just yet.
Yeah, watch this space. Once again, potential links to other destinations. We shall see. Rory, thank you so much for your time and your expert insights there with you. Greatly appreciate it. From Madrid, thanks so much.
Pleasure.